Hi, welcome to our Chew and Chat. I'm Linda Dove, and I work with Meteor Education and also serve as the Chief Academic Officer for the Center for College and Career Readiness. We're really excited to have quite a few of you join us today. Our topic today is Leadership from Afar, a principal's perspective during challenging times. And very excited to be hosting our little 20-minute chat today with an awesome special guest that we're very grateful was willing to take his time. This is Jim Mackin from Hendrick Hudson. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
In New York. And Jim, if you don't mind, just to share with everybody, just share a little bit about you and your school to kind of give us context before we jump into some specifics.
Sure. Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you to Meteor for having me. I am blessed to be here and hopefully help out colleagues from wherever you may be from navigate this difficult time. Before I talk about myself, I just hope everybody is well and safe and taking care of themselves. And keep up the good work. You are leaders and warriors out there, and people rely on you. So keep fighting the good fight. Stay safe. Take care of your health, and we'll get through this together. So a little bit about me. I am the proud principal of a school in Westchester County, New York, a very highly competitive academic environment just outside of New York City, about 30 miles. The name of my school is Hendrick Hudson High School. I've been the principal here for 16 years. I was an assistant principal for 3 prior to that. So I've been in one place for a while, and there's a reason for that. I love Hen Hud, and there were lots of goals that I had when I first came here that I'm still trying to check off of that list. And I just love the community. I love the kids, and there was no reason to ever go anyplace else right now. So here I am, and been working with Meteor for a few years. Love the company, love their message, love their philosophy and vision, and just glad I could be here to talk to people today.
Great. So before we get started, guys, you're going to notice there's a chat, and we want you to chat. Share information. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, maybe what your title is, and then if you've got questions or comments, please feel free to put them in there, and I'll address them with Jim and answer some of your questions that you have. The interesting part about having Jim as a first guest is also where he's from, because he basically has been in the hotbed, unfortunately, of where this virus has really started in Westchester County and in New York. So, I just want to throw out a question to you, Jim, and then feel free to go with it any which way you want. But knowing that you're living in the hot spot, mm-hmm. and still living in the hot spot, mm-hmm. Dealing with this from the very beginning, how have you, as a principal, dealt with the uncertainty of all that's happening and all the changes, and how quickly you've got to change on a dime to address the needs of your faculty and staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really challenging time because, unfortunately, much like many of the things outside of the classroom environment that we experience as administrators, we never really are fully trained or have, all the things that we need to deal with these problems. And this was something that I think as a nation we saw coming, but, I don't know that we took it as seriously as possible. And then it kind of landed in our backyard. I'd say about 15 miles from New Rochelle, New York, where, really the hotbed of this pandemic in the United States and in the East Coast started. It was really fast and furious. So, we were meeting constantly with our superintendent, meeting with parents, PTSA, our Parent Teacher Association, and just trying to figure out how do we function should we close. And it continues to be a challenge. I wouldn't say it's no longer a challenge. It continues to be a challenge just from, do you have the resources to deploy, IT equipment? Do you have the resources to make sure that students with disabilities have what they need? So this was about as an extreme of a situation that I think you could ask for or experience, short of, tragedies, like some of the things that we faced in schools. like shootings and things like that. But this has been a real test of leadership in my mind across the nation for school leaders and all leaders.
Yeah, it's funny when you and I chatted before, you talked about how your role as a leader has changed and how you have to be very adaptive in terms of connecting with your faculty and staff. Can share a little bit about how you see that? How has your role changed to some degree through this?
Yeah, I think it, when I was talking to you, there's all different styles of leadership. And, I think um, it's a misnomer to say that you're just a single type of leader. You have a single style. I think principals in particular, because of what they face on a daily basis, need to wear many different leadership style hats, because everybody's a little different. You have to deal with people a little differently with each circumstance. My role, I feel like, has really changed from the manager, operations person, curriculum leader to cheerleader. I really see the role here of the principal as being the rah-rah guy or person, to make sure that your staff knows how much you value them, is really important in this situation, because so much is riding on their back. I think so much in a normal situation rides on education. We're expected to teach kids manners and social studies and how to use social media correctly. We get all this stuff seems to funnel to schools, and now we're in a situation where I think they need that reinforcement even more, because they're in an environment, teaching in an environment that's unfamiliar to most of them. They're using technology that they may have never used before and learning on the fly. So my role has really just been to make sure that they know that I trust them, and they knew this before, but to reinforce that I trust them in doing their jobs as professionals, that I'm here to support them no matter what they need, and really just making sure that whenever they're inquiring about anything, that I'm responding immediately. I think that's also another key, to be very sensitive, to being as responsive as you can to needs, so people don't think that you're not paying attention.
So how have you done that? What are some specific strategies or that you put into play to stay connected with your teachers and parents and even students? Because I know you do that too.
Yeah. It was something that I was toying with, about doing videos, and I would say, once you do it, you kind of get addicted to it. I had never done screencasting or videos or webinars before, so I'm learning things in this closure just like everybody else. So I said, why not? Let me start a nightly update, because typing emails at this point, I've had enough, and it was just easier for me to kind of speak. I'm a talker, as you'll see. We'll probably go past 20 minutes today, but it was easier for me because I'm the type of personality that I am, that I like to speak. I think emotion comes out much more clearly when you speak to people rather than an email. So I started each night. I will spend about 5 to 7 minutes outlining what I did for the day that pertains to school. I make sure I start every video with a thank you to them, just an emphatic, profound thank you for everything that they've done, everything that they're going to do, everything that they've been faced with, and also just asking them and giving them some hints on how to take care of themselves, to do something that they find joy in each day, making sure that they're finding balance. It's a very broken record kind of video, but what I find is, I send it out to my staff, and they immediately watch it each night. So I was happy, because you can see in some of the platforms that you can see how many people are viewing. And so as long as they're viewing it, I'll do them. And I do the same thing for students. I do morning announcements. And what I find is, depending on when I send them out, I get a little different level of viewership. I think one of the good things is kids are sleeping in a little later and getting some more rest, which I think they needed. So I've been sending them out later. But again, just some words of encouragement, quotes and things like that. And I've been doing that since the beginning. And people have been very responsive to that. And I think it just shows that you care, you're in touch, and that you're there if they need you.
So Jim, we have a question
Sure.
from Tony, and it's a great question. And he asked, what permanent changes do you predict will occur due to the virus challenges? How will live school change?
Yeah, I
Great
think,
question.
Tony, it's a great question. And I think, what's beautiful about the United States is all of our schools are so individual. They have their own personality. Our districts all have, different personalities. So I think that will really be up to the leaders that are leading schools like you. I mean, I think we all have visions and goals for what we want our schools to be. I think there's certainly opportunity here. For instance, my school had just started probably the beginning of this year, a discussion on grading and going away from numerical grading. And I think this pandemic has shown what I don't want to use too strong a language, but that there's some questionable things about numerical grading, and maybe we should be moving towards a more standards-based kind of look at how we evaluate students. And that's hard to do because we've been giving numerical grades since the 1900s, and historically we do it because that's what we've always done. So I think, Tony, to answer your question, I'm not Nostradamus, but I would say it's really up to you. If, as a leader of your school, my hope is that you look for the opportunities here during this time to move your staff in a direction that you feel you need to move, because I think there's a lot of opportunity, because now the fear of technology may be gone, or the fear of going away from numerical grades because you're using a pass fail and you're giving feedback to rate students. A lot of the walls are being broken down because we're been forced into this situation. So I would say, as a leader, you have to be opportunistic and identify, where do you want to take your school? Because I don't think it can be a systemic, hey, we're doing it this way. We know that never works because we're so individual and so unique.
So I'm going to follow up on Tony's question and you kind of alluded to it, Jim, but what do you feel that you and your teachers are dabbling in and maybe beginning to put into place that this challenge has kind of forced you to, but might move you in a completely different direction going into next year? Maybe a direction you always wanted to go in.
I think there's always been a fear of, at least in my area, the whole idea of online or hybrid teaching, because of the impacts to staffing, the fear of the impacts to staffing, or, how students will respond. And I think now that people are doing it, they're screencasting, or they're recording themselves, or they're, using live teaching through their computer, that they see opportunities. And what I see is, a lot of organic professional learning communities starting to spring up. There's pockets of teachers. Oh, how are you using Screencastify, or how are you using Google Meet, or have you seen this whiteboard extension for this live app? So yeah, I think where I'll be pushing is, how do we incorporate some of this hybrid learning to open up opportunities for students to take more of the courses that they may want to take in my school. That's because we're a very highly competitive environment. So our kids want to take everything they can. They want to take 15 classes in a 9-period day. So if they could, they would, and they wouldn't eat and they wouldn't go to the bathroom all day. So the bottom line is, I think it's an opportunity for me to look at, is there a chance to offer more opportunity and more choice to students in a greater variety of areas and topics.
Okay, great. And I want to ask you this, because I know when you get done with this call, you're jumping on another call, but I just think it's kind of interesting, the safe spaces that you as a leader have tried to provide for your teachers and for your students to be able to just talk from a social emotional
Right.
connection piece. Can you share a little bit about what safe spots and spaces
Yeah.
you tried to do?
So, my big concern in reflecting on, this while we're in it, has been, how are we from a mental health perspective, dealing with this, whether it's me or a teacher. This is very real. This is an exhausting mentally and physically. It's a situation that's mentally and physically exhausting. So right out of the gate, I decided, and this wasn't my idea. We have a group of colleagues that meet monthly, all the principals in the region, about 40 of us, and we sit and have lunch and just chat, and complain to each other, and then we go back to our schools. But, the idea was being kicked around, and another one of my colleagues had tried it, and I said, let me try that. And so basically all I do is I pick 2 times a week, usually a morning and an afternoon time slot, different days, and I call them wellness check-ins, and I slot out an hour time range, and I open up the meeting, invite the whole staff. Whoever wants to come can come, and it's an opportunity for us to be together. Even though we're not physically together, it's an opportunity for people to share how they're feeling and what they're going through, whether it be great experiences or sadness over a loved one getting sick. And I didn't know if one or none or the entire staff was going to show up. And to my pleasant surprise, I mean, we've had about 8, and I'm averaging about half of my staff showing up to these meets. So what that tells me, without being a researcher, is, this is something that's needed. People need to be able to be with their colleagues and talk and at least feel like, hey, somebody else is going through this. So if I can do that, like I said to them, I actually had one this morning. I said, I'll do this as long as one person shows up. I'll be here, and we could go 2 hours. We do an hour and then we kind of get to our day, but we could easily do 2 hours, easy. But I think that's been very helpful to them.
What about with your students?
Students has been a little tougher, and I'd be lying if I said anything different. For the first time in my career, I'm really myself having an emotional difficulty figuring out what to do for them, because I think there's such a great sense of loss that I almost feel like anything I do will is not going to fill that hole at all. So we're working on a number of things, but I think I just leapt off today, and and I have been having small meetings with groups of students, especially the students that were at some of my at-risk students that I wanted to check up on. So that's been a big part of the first 5 or 6 weeks, just following up, upwards of 30 or 40 kids. But now starting to meet with classes, to try to bring the air out of some of the things that are brewing, like what's going to happen, and I think they can ask it, and it's okay for me to say, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But, we're going to get through this together. So that's going to happen today with the senior class.
Okay. And so what are some things, if all goes well, actually, hold on, because I got another question here. So I'm going to go with I have some good questions, but they have better questions, Jim. So I'm going with the audience, okay? So here's a great question. What do you feel leaders may need the most support in besides technology as we as leaders move forward?
I think, the principalship, whether it's a middle school, high school, elementary school, is a really tough job. It's probably one of the tougher jobs out there. And, we all have bosses. We all work for superintendents or, chancellors, or depending on where you are. And I think what helps me is knowing that I have the support of the leadership above me to make decisions for my building, with my staff, and that they're supported. Not reckless, but being able to have quite a bit of autonomy, because I know my staff. I know what's necessary. I think that is something I think leaders need. Leaders need to do what I talked about earlier that I'm doing with my staff, which is listen, it's your building. You know what you need to do. I'm here if you need the help. And I think it's especially critical because a lot of the things we're going to be dealing with are socio-emotional things that are going to be keeping people out of work, maybe missing time, and I think we're going to have to really be looking at things a little bit more with a little bit more flexibility because people are going to be struggling when we come out of that. And I think to not use the principle and the capacity that you should be using them and letting them have the autonomy to be the leaders that we are is something I'd like everybody hopefully to have moving forward. So have that conversation with your superintendent. I don't think it's a bad conversation to have, to say, listen, this is what I'm going to need, from you moving forward, and good ones will probably ask that question of you. What are you going to need in the fall if we open? What are you going to need to get people on track? How are we going to bridge some of the deficits in learning, which are getting wider and wider every day? But we need people to trust our leadership and to be able to do the jobs that I know we can all do.
So here's my kind of final question, unless some other folks have some questions. And I'm probably asking you something you're just now processing and working on, but how are you planning for the future? How are you planning from now until when school opens till the end of December with all the different scenarios that could possibly happen? You've got to kind of be prepared for everything and anything.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's hard because right now in New York we're living on a every 2-week kind of schedule. So the governor of New York, who's done a great job, Mr. Cuomo, he is giving us 2-week closures. Now the most recent one, he just closed us until May 15th. We were going at 2-week stints, and he has closed us till May 15th. And that's really hard because I'm a very realistic person. I'm the kind of rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. Let's get to where we need to go, and let's not. Hope is good, but we don't want to give false hope about what's going to happen this year. So yeah, it's a challenge to plan when you have that kind of calendar. Okay, how do you plan every 2 weeks? We may come back, we may not come back. There has to be 2 plans. So I think moving forward, we're planning on the scenario that we're probably not going back to school this year. And my concern is now shifting my mindset to how am I compensating for what we lost this year, because that's going to be a long conversation, and we need to be prepared for it in the fall, because our teachers are going to face another challenge in the fall. They're going to face a challenge of when a kid is struggling in their class terribly with skills or content, you're not going to be able to send them to an RTI class or a learning center potentially, or classify them. You're really going to have the skills to deal with that in your classroom. And that's going to be a challenge for people. So we need to plan on how are we supporting teachers to deal with the challenges of the next phase of this thing, which is when we come back.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jim. I know you've got another whole group, one of your groups that you need to meet with, but want to thank you for taking the time to do this, and thank you for being a leader out there and a voice and sharing your insight. And just sharing your heart, which I think is really important. I think it's something we all as leaders need to do. Strategies, but also our heart, because it is a challenging time. But, you and I talked before, sometimes out of challenges come real revolutions and maybe things that in the long run are best for kids. So thank you for your time. I'd ask the rest of you, if you don't mind, just in your chat box, just jot down one thing. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes. One thing you gained from this, or maybe additional information that you would like. And we appreciate you taking your time to be with us today. So thank you. Anything we can do to help you, we'd be happy to.
Yes,
so
thank you, Linda. Good luck, everybody. I'll give Linda my email. I'm happy, or I'll even type it in the chat if I can. I'm happy to answer any questions or help in any way I can. Just stay safe, take care of yourselves. Your health is important. because you're the leaders of your school. I don't think people realize how hard you work. So just take care of your own health, find some time to do something that makes you feel happy during the day. And God bless. And I hope everybody is well.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.